It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. John Frachella DMD. He's a pediatric dentist in Oregon and Maine with 45 years experience in the delivery of dental services in public and private settings. For the first 32 years of his career, he was a dental director of a free clinic for indigent children in Bangor, Maine, and for 10 years served as a director of federal clinics in Wheeler County, Oregon. He also works in private practices across the country, is on staff at Ohio State University Dental School, lectures for NYU Lutheran Medical College dental residency programs. Dr. John Frachella is a national leader in the use of SDF, silver diamine fluoride, and how SDF impacts dental schools and clinical practices. He presents new options in the management of caries lesions, especially in certain instances and populations. Over the past decade, Dr. Frachella has been using silver solutions in combination with glass ionomer technology to arrest caries while simultaneously addressing destructive dental cavitation called silver modified Atraumatic restoration technique, SMART. He sees the minimally invasive medical management of caries as a new, historically proven, highly preventive standard of care for the treatment of worldwide populations of children and special needs adults who desperately need dental services the most. My gosh, I've been a huge fan of yours. I've had so many people ask me to interview you: Jeanette McLean, Jeremy Horst, Steve Duffin. You're just, this is just an honor to be talking to you today. So there's a new, as you call it, a paradigm shift, and it's very emotional because a 2-year-old has 8 cavities, needs 8 pulpotomies, chrome steel crowns. They take him to the OR, and it seems like every couple of months somebody doesn't recover from OR. It's all over social media. The dentists are destroyed. The parents are destroyed. The patient's gone. So now, silver diamine fluoride, it's like, would that 2-year-old little girl been alive if they just painted SDF on 8 teeth? This is very emotional. Are you feeling the pushback from this debate?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're getting pushback all over the place, but I think there's an equal amount of acceptance. So there's a balance. We have pushback, we've got acceptance. I just got a notification from colleagues in Maine, where I work 4 months out of the year, who said that SDF has taken off like crazy and SMART is taking off like crazy. And 2 years ago, they didn't want to hear about it. So there was pushback 2 years. 2 years ago. Now there's acceptance. And I think that we're reaching a pretty good balance now. And I want to thank you for interviewing Jeanette and Steve Duffin and others on this subject, because I think the more we can bring this to the public's eye and to organized dentistry's attention, the more we'll reach that balance and get less pushback.
Well, this is Dentistry Uncensored, and every animal in the animal kingdom is very tribal. So why does some of the dental tribe love it, and why do some of the dental tribe push back? What is the foundation of this resistance?
Well, essentially, we don't know, we can't do, we won't change. And, we've got to combat the willful ignorance and the fear. The big fear, of course, is, that dentists think they're going to lose income. And we've proven over and over again in practice after practice that indeed it's exactly the opposite. You can increase your income and be much more happy doing dentistry on phobics if indeed you have a practice that where you're treating children or phobic adults, because less needles, less fear, less of all of the things that cause stress. And, we just have to get used to the fact that we're treating more teeth in one appointment than we used to, because, I guess we have to ask ourselves, is it even ethical at this junction to ever treat a single lesion or a single quadrant of lesions when we can arrest all lesions immediately without needles or drills and simultaneously fill food traps prevent recurrent decay, prevent future decay in sound teeth by providing mineral ion reservoirs of glass ionomer that remineralize and kill bacteria in a way that makes mouths healthier, regardless of income, behavior, lack of insurance, or limited access to care. And that's a hard pill for them to swallow, but it's one that's, I think, is going to be inevitable.
Well, I want to start at the very beginning. It's only June 24th. We just had 6,000 kids walk out of dental schools in the United States and Canada. Decay is still the number one disease in sapiens around the world. They still debate the basics. What causes decay? Is it entirely nutrition? Is it contagious? I have noticed in 32 years that when a 2-year-old comes in and needs pulpotomies and chrome steel crowns, dad's got bombed out molars and is always holding this little kid on his lap and kissing it and sharing food with it. So review what causes this decay on a worldwide level and what could prevent it. And let's start there.
Well, it's, we have to honor the disease for what it is. It's a bacterial disease. And we have to ask ourselves, what other bacterial diseases of the human body are treated with invasive surgery as a first measure, as we do in dentistry? I work with a colleague in Maine, and he's an internist. He's a physician, an internist. And then he's also a dentist. And he does dentistry, on the side, and does internal medicine when he's not doing dentistry. And I asked him when he comes to the dental office, I said, when you put on your dentist hat, what makes it different than the hat that you wear as an internist? Do you treat anything in internal medicine that is a bacterial disease? Do you treat it with surgery first? And what makes it so special that you can treat this bacterial disease, dental disease, caries, dental caries, with surgical invasion as a first measure? That's where we have to really separate the wheat from the chaff here. That's the deal. So I think that we need to first honor it as a bacterial disease, the bacterial disease that it is. And we have to ask this: when you've got that scenario that you just identified, of the dad with the decay and the kid's on his lap and he's got decay and they're kissing, if the house is on fire, what do? Do you call a carpenter or do you call a fireman, Howard?
Fireman.
Exactly. So let's be firemen first, and then let's do the countertop and the cabinetry after we put the fire out.
It kind of reminds me of the H. pylori, where everybody in America was seeing these ulcers and had to treat them with a surgery, and then it was the Australians, wasn't it, who said this is a bacteria. And
exactly.
it weakens the protective mucus coating of the stomach and duodenum, thus allowing acid to get through to the sensitive lining beneath. Both acid and bacteria irritate the lining and cause a sore ulcer. It's the same thing. This bacteria is weakening the protective mucus coating of the tooth and the biofilm, and so it's kind of a great analogy. Did you see parallels between H. pylori bacteria and caries?
Absolutely, I see analogy there. It's exactly identical to that. We have to reach out and look at the origins of the disease and honor that from the beginning. And we have to realize that we've gone astray in dentistry. We started with G.V. Black and W.D. Miller identifying it as a bacterial disease and treating it as such. And then we got involved with the jewelry of dentistry, and we got enamored by it, and we got rich from it. And then all of a sudden, the disease got away from us because we got away from it. And we need to go back to the origins of the disease, and we need to look at the disease today differently than we ever have. because we're in a situation where we're eating more sugars and different kinds of sugars. We've gone from disaccharides to monosaccharides. We've gone to the corn syrups, and it isn't the same disease, Howard. This isn't the disease that we were facing when you and I graduated dental school. It's worse. It's more virulent. It's more virulent because of the substrate changing, and it's more virulent because of the habits that we have. And we have to get back to treating the disease for what it is, especially for those populations that need it the most. And we have to realize that 50% of all children with paid for medical and or private health insurance don't utilize the benefits that they already have. And we have data on that from 2013 to 2018. And what are the reasons? Too expensive, too invasive, bad previous dental experiences. So half of your potential market share won't even come to see you. I mean, we're in a career where few people want to see us, and we're the last place they want to come back to.
So in review, you do believe that caries is a contagious inside the primary home where this child lives?
Yeah. Absolutely. If we're going to swap food back and forth, I mean, it's so obvious, the parents come in.
It's not obvious to the dentist though. So make it obvious. I still get massive pushback that perio or caries is not contagious. And it's like, well, if you walk out in your backyard and you see a giraffe there, I mean, it came from somewhere. It didn't that's not how evolution works. You just can't walk out in your backyard and find a giraffe. It came from a mom and dad giraffe somewhere.
I treat a lot of Mexican patients. I love my Mexican population of patients because they bring me tamales for $2 a piece, and they're like a vitamin pill, and I love them. But I've watched them cook, and mom's got a mouthful of cavities, and she's swapping food with the kid. Here, taste this, taste that. You're not, how are we going to change that? We've got to go back 10,000 years into Aztec culture and tell them, well, quit doing this. Well, how did we get here is what they're saying to us. They're saying, well, we got here by swapping food. We're not going to stop it because you say it's a contagious disease. We have to recognize that it is and realize that some things we can't change. Some cultural phenomena within certain populations, many of whom are high-risk populations, high risk of caries populations, we're not going to be able to change their social dietary habits. But one thing that we can change through the use of antimicrobial medicines, liquids, we can actually change the flora by balancing it. We can't totally prevent, we can't totally stop the disease, but we can control it with antibacterials and remineralizers. And that's the important thing. So I think if we can recognize that we need to be firemen first and carpenters second, that we will have more fun practicing for one basic reason. We're going to have less emergencies tomorrow. If you treat a patient today who's got a mouthful of caries, no matter where it came from, whether it was contagious or not, forget about it. They got a mouthful of caries, and you're going to treat one quadrant today? Well, tomorrow's emergency that's going to screw up your whole day is the teeth that you left untreated, that you could have controlled the caries in those teeth right then and there on the spot for pennies on the dollar and in just a few minutes, painlessly and effectively. So why let it go out the door? In fact, I'll say this, Howard, is it ethical to let it walk? I don't think so anymore. Not with the knowledge that we now have, that we can arrest caries, that partial or incomplete decay excavation is the new higher standard, and that glass ionomer remineralizes demineralized tooth structure that should not be removed.
Interesting stuff. But by the way, I think it was so hilarious. You're mentioning your Mexican friend. You're Italian, and most Americans think Italians started tomatoes in their sauces, and it was actually the first tomatoes to make it to Europe were brought back from the Spanish conquistadors of South Africa, Peru specifically, in the 16th century. The first mention of it's 1548 in Tuscany. That's amazing. So you believe decay is diet related. You believe it's contagious. Well, then what exactly defines the high risk populations? What is the difference between a high risk and a low risk population? Is it diet, culture, home care? What defines this?
It used to be diet, culture, and home care, but now the disease has become so virulent that it absolutely knows no socioeconomic boundary. So you can have the very, very rich parents of who are going out into the workforce and leaving their children to play with their iPhones and computers and having no supervision, who are sipping on perfectly healthy organic apple juice all day long with a frequency rate that exceeds what would be healthy, and are dropping their pH, their salivary pH, the pH in their mouths to 4.4, when we know that caries occurs optimally at 6.6. And their mouths are at 4.4 for the whole day as they're sipping on apple juice. The very affluent mom and dad come home and look in the kid's mouth and say, oh my God, he's got all this decay. High risk doesn't mean a public health and low socioeconomic status. It transcends all of that because the virulence of the disease itself has altered. It's changed. Again, it's not the same disease as when you and I graduated dental school in the 70s.
And again, why has it changed? Because of the different types of sugars?
Because of the substrate. We've gone from a polysaccharide or a disaccharide to a monosaccharide. We changed to corn syrup since you and I graduated dental school. Howard, that makes a massive change. The bacteria can metabolize the monosaccharide much more quickly than it can a disaccharide, and just the sheer amount of that sugar, of that substrate in the diet, it pervades everything. It's everywhere. It's in all foods. And yes, should we go back and change? Should we go back to Weston Price? Yes, Weston Price was right. Go to those cultures back in time that didn't have refined foods, that were eating natural foods. There was no caries, of course. But can we go back there? I'd like to think that we could. I'd like to think that, that I can as much as possible in my yurt in the middle of the Ocho National Forest. Yeah. But when I go out into the world and have to do dentistry and I've got to go to Jimmy John's to get a sub, I know it's going to, something I'm eating is going to, whatever I'm eating is going to be laced with corn syrup. And so it's ubiquitous. So I don't think we can control that in an immediate sense. In the long run, I hope we can. I hope we can fight the sugar lobby the way that we fought the tobacco lobby. Okay, I hope we can do that. I don't think we should give up the fight. But in the meantime, we got to be firemen. And we should concentrate on putting the fire out in all patients, all socioeconomic groups. I work in practices that are private practice facades that are public health practices. There's cost shifting. We're working on people that are affluent so that we can turn around and treat those children that are on Medicaid or on the Oregon health plan or on Maine care. And so we're cost shifting. In all of those populations, we should be firemen first and carpenters later when time, behavior, and money allow. Because those are the three things, right? Oh, I don't have time to go to the dentist. Oh, I don't have the money to go to the dentist. Oh, the kid's behavior is bad. Well, in that case, be a fireman and paint the teeth.
The European countries like the UK don't have this problem because they do not authorize the use of high fructose corn syrup. Are you aware of that? And what do you think of that?
Well, I think that they're ahead of the curve, and that we could they serve as a good example to us. I think that's great. I don't know that their caries rate is less than ours. I don't have the data on that. There are others that can tell us more about that. But my end of the deal is the fireman end, Howard. I know what I see in the populations that I serve in what I call the third world, in yours and my backyard. Okay, we can go to Bolivia like Dr. Duffin does. We can go to Africa like Dr. Duffin does. We can see these populations of that have, huge amounts of caries because they don't have access to care. Well, all I have to do is walk into my backyard of Redmond, Oregon, and I can see as much or more decay, or in Maine, where I see more decay than I see even in Oregon, that in the communities surrounding Bangor, where I have a place that I stay in a few months out of the year, where the decay is so out of control, including in the capital city of Maine, in Augusta, Maine, where I work in a community dental clinic, where the kids come in one after another, and I paint their teeth and I put in glass ionomer. And what do you think the parents say, Howard? The parents say, "Oh, Dr. John, you're a children's dentist, but will you treat my teeth?" And then you know what else happens, Howard? The dentists come and watch me, and I've invited you, and I will continue to invite you and your team to come and watch me work in settings like Augusta, Maine. And you know what dentists like you who job shadow me say? They go like this, Howard. They go, hey, do you have time, Dr. John? Would you do that in my mouth? I lost this amalgam that I've had for 40 years. And it's way up here, and my dentist wants to do a crown, but I know it's going to be a root canal. I don't have the time. I don't want to spend the money, even though I can get professional courtesy and have it done. And here are these dentists who come in as doubting Thomases at the beginning of the day, asking me at the end of the day if I have another 10 minutes, because that's all it takes, to treat their mouths with smart. I mean, that's the highest honor and the greatest endorsement of all. They want me to be a fireman in their mouths and their dentists.
One more thing I want to say about the high fructose corn syrup is a lot of people say, well, it's not banned in Europe because of health issue. It's banned because of a production quota. Look, they always say politics and sausage. You don't want to see how it's made. You just want to eat it. So if the government management team of your tribe has to put this through under a production quota. But one thing that they're always talking about is that countries that use high fructose corn syrup in their food supply have a significantly higher prevalence of type 2 diabetes than countries that do not use the sweetener. And it's a fact that Canada, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Belgium were also high relative consumers of this. So this changing from a simple sugar cane to high fructose corn syrup, it is a new variable that you think might be changing the dental decay disease, right?
I don't think it's changing it. It has already changed it. The change is here. We're past it. We're there. We're at total destruction. We're at a level of total destruction. I have children come in from, again, all socioeconomic levels whose mouths are totally destroyed. I mean, they come in with 20 decayed primary teeth. I look at my job being that of trying to rescue them from the hospital OR, despite their dietary habits, despite the cultural differences, and despite what it is that's going on in their home. Because, Howard, I can't go home with them and be a disciplinarian in their lives. I see them for a few moments, and I see a patient about every 10 minutes. And what I have to do within that 10 minutes is try to convince them that it's a matter of frequency. So if you're going to talk about this high fructose corn syrup and get carried away with it, we got to look at the frequency of it. So I say to the kid, I go, well, what's the poison, right, Howard? What is your poison? What's causing this? Don't lie to me. I'm not going to criticize you. Just tell me what it is. Well, many times it's organic apple juice, sipping on it instead of guzzling it. So number one, you know what we have to do? We have to make a neon sign and put it over the top of their house and over the mirror in the bathroom. And the neon sign says, chug, don't sip. Because if they chug Monster or Red Bull or organic apple juice or Coca-Cola or anything that is going to cause decay, if you drink it, sip it, and have high frequency, if they chug it instead, then they're going to have less decay because they're chugging it. It's not staying in the mouth. And then I try to convince them, rinse your mouth out with water after you've had your Coke episode or your Monster episode. And so they come in and they say, well, Dr. John, really, I'll tell you, you told me not to lie. I'll tell you the truth. I drink 4 Monsters a day. Okay, or 4 Red Bulls a day. And they're 14 years old. I go, chug them. Well, I don't think I can chug them. Well, you're going to have to chug them if you want me to work on your teeth, because I'm not going to work on your teeth if you're going to destroy them by sipping on this stuff. So start chugging. And I want to tell you something. You may die from chugging 4 Monsters a day, but you're going to be an exquisite corpse because your teeth are going to be good. So come on, let's think about this for real. Okay. What causes decay? Gummy bears. Why? Because of the frequency. Well, I try to get them to replace the gummy bear with chocolate. Why? Because chocolate melts, milk chocolate melts at 98.6, which is what your mouth is. Just if you put milk chocolate on the dash of your car, it's going to melt. You put milk chocolate in your mouth, it goes in your stomach where you want it or where we want it, not on your teeth. It doesn't have duration. And then take a drink of water and limit the frequency. We're frequency freaks. We got to have this thing in our mouth, this sour ball, this Starburst candy that has maleic acid in it, and we keep it in our mouth for hours at a time, pop another one, pop another one, pop another one, drop the pH in the mouth to 4.4 all day long, and then wonder why we have decay? We need to educate our patients about frequency because we're not going to be able to eliminate, they're already addicts. And you know what? We're not addiction counselors, we're dentists.
I want to remind the young kids that just got out of school, I walked out in 87 and this is 2019. So you do the math, 3 decades ago. I thought restorative dentistry was better because we were replacing this bacterial infection with a strong metal that was very antibacterial. I mean, it was half amalgam. The other half was silver, zinc, copper, tin. It's all antibacterial. And then we did this aesthetic health compromise and went with inert plastic composites, and the recurrent decay just exploded. And they usually had recurrent decay in 6.5 years. The amalgams were 28 years. Do you miss amalgam? Do you think that aesthetic health compromise of whiter, brighter teeth that we really paid a high price for? Because I know that now people like you and John Kanka and all these people are looking at fillings with an active ingredient. They're going towards glass ionomer cements. They're going for fluoride varnish. They're going for silver diamine fluoride. I mean, everything you guys talk about is an active ingredient against the other 5,500 species of animals, 400 to 600 of which live in our mouth, eating this stuff. I mean, is that where it's going? Are we going to go away from inert plastic composite resins to active ingredient fillings so that we have a biological weapon as opposed to just a mechanical replacement for physics of chewing?
Well, let me answer your first question. Do I miss amalgam? I don't miss amalgam. However, it was wonderfully bioactive. It corroded, and then it released silver that killed the bacteria. And anybody who's removed an old amalgam, a broken old amalgam, knows what arrested caries looks like, right? You see it. It's under there. It's under the amalgam. It's arrested. That's wonderful. But what ended up happening was it wasn't remineralizing. It was antibacterial, but not remineralizing. Then we got into the plastics and the beauty of dentistry, the jewelry of dentistry. But, I heard Gordon Christensen say on your podcast last year that composites are cariogenic. They cause cavities. I also heard him say that in 1978. So why have we continued to use posterior composites? Now, look, number one, take nothing out of your toolkit. Don't take amalgam out of your toolkit. Don't take composites out of your toolkit. We're going to need them. I snap off my central incisor by going over the handlebars of my mountain bike. I want you to replace it with the newest, latest, greatest composite that's aesthetically pleasing, please. Okay? So don't take that out of your toolkit, please. However, why would I want such a thing in my mouth on posterior teeth that aren't in my smile line? I want something that is as biologically active as possible. And Howard, I'll tell you something. You can't outglass glass. New manufacturers are coming out with this bioactive stuff. I mean, Activa is a great example. It's 80 to 90% resin. There is nothing bioactive about resin. There is nothing biologically interactive, because that's a better term, biologically interactive about any part of resin. So can we combine resins with glass? Okay, because you're not going to outglass glass. There is nothing on planet Earth that is more tooth-like than glass. Why? Because all of the mineral ions that are in a tooth are in glass. Why? Because glass comes from sand. What's in sand? You break down sand, you break down a tooth, and they've got all the same mineral ions. Okay? Phosphorus, calcium, fluoride. Even aluminum, even strontium is in glass and is in teeth. So when you powder glass, reconstitute it, put it into a tooth in a putty form, it becomes the tooth and the tooth becomes it. It forms a zone that is a permanent zone of acid-resistant zone of chemical fusion. You can't do that with amalgam. You can't do that with composite. Resin tags are resin tags. They're not molecular cross-linking. You don't get molecular cross-linking with composite. You don't get molecular cross-linking of the material with the tooth and the tooth with the material like you do with glass. So, are there new formulations of glass coming out? You bet there are. I've been testing new glasses for different companies now for the last couple of years, and they get better and better because we're asking for more aesthetics. We're asking for more translucency. We're asking for more of the things that composites give us, that amalgams gave us, that silicates gave us, but silicates were bioactive. Howard, you remember silicates, but what did they do? They caused tooth sensitivity. What does glass ionomer do? It is so desensitizing, as is silver diamine fluoride. And when we use desensitizing materials that work with our biological systems, well, suddenly we're winning. So yeah, I think that's where we're going. That's where we should be going. If one of my gold crowns comes out which happened to me a couple of years ago. What are you going to cement that on with, Howard, in my mouth? Are you going to cement that on with the latest, greatest resin? Mister, I'll tell you what, if I'm sitting in your chair and you grab the latest, greatest resin and tell me you're going to put that in there, I'm going to stop you. And I'm going to say, first, put silver diamine fluoride on it, on my tooth, because it's under my gold crown, and then put a glass ionomer cement or a resin modified glass ionomer cement. So that raises the question, how much resin can we put in the glass and still get the biological effect? And I would say that 20% resin is the limit. In other words, 80% pure glass, 20% resin, and we'll get that biological activity that we're looking for. Plus, we'll have the aesthetics. Okay, so we can have the aesthetics of the resin along with the medicinal properties of the pure glass and blend them together. How they do that, how the chemists do that at the bench, I don't know, because it seems to me like they're dissimilar chemistries, but I know this, it works. And it doesn't matter in SMART whether we use resin-modified glass ionomers with 80% glass and 20% resin or pure glass ionomer, we seem to get the same results. I think we can combine the two worlds and get the best from both.
So you mentioned Pulp Dent's Activa, bioactive products for proactive dentists. So you're not a fan of Pulp Dent's Activa bioactive restorative restorations?
My friend, that was the biggest marketing blitz scam of dentistry ever. They put this stuff out. They've got these individuals that promote this that aren't dentists, claim to be scientists, but don't have any degrees I can see, that tell us, oh, they're bioactive, this, that, and the other thing. When we use them in combination with silver diamine fluoride, when we use Activa in combination with silver diamine fluoride, we get failures. And then people come back to us and say SMART doesn't work. Why is that? Because when I write an article for Dr. Bicuspid, for instance, okay, I write the article about silver diamine fluoride and glass ionomer, and they put a banner for Activa on the top. I didn't put that banner there. They did. Why? Because Dr. Bicuspid is owned by Shine, and Shine wants to sell Activa for Pulp Dent. So they put the banner up there, and the dentist who's reading my article, he actually or she actually is reading this saying, oh, because they're reading it very quickly, because they're very busy, I'll use Activa for the SMART technique that Dr. Frachella is recommending, and then they fail, and then they say SMART fails. Look, we got to stop with the advertising and the BS. This is Dentistry Uncensored, right, Howard?
Right.
So let's get censored about it. This is bull. This is not science. Resin is inert, damn it. You need to ask, what is in the material? You need, as a dentist, as a new dentist graduating from dental school, you mentioned the numbers. You need, as a new dentist, to do your due diligence. What is in the material? Now, if the manufacturer, and let's use Pulp Dent in this instance, says to you, no, we can't tell you what the formulation of Activa is, we aren't allowed to tell you how much glass is in Activa because it's proprietary. Walk away. You need to know. You need to know what is in this material. This is not about ad copy. This is about science. Are you a healer or are you a snake oil salesman? What are you as a dentist? Use your intelligence. Use your own scientific intuition and your scientific knowledge to analyze the products you're using. And if it's resin, know that it's inert. I'm not saying don't use it. I want it on my front tooth. I don't want it on my back tooth. What is it doing on my back tooth? Nothing. It's cariogenic. Even Gordon says that.
Even Gordon, the God of Dentistry. Oh, you mentioned Dr. Bicuspid. I had lunch last week with the new owner, Craig Overpeck. He's the CEO. So it's not owned by Shine. But I want to go back to amalgam. Back to amalgam, the average dentist has 2,000 patients, and you said you don't want anybody to remove anything from their toolbox. I mean, half the dentists in America and the 20 richest countries have entirely removed amalgam from their toolbox. And so if the average dentist has 2,000 patients, can a dentist actually say there could never be a use for amalgam for any of my 2,000 patients, or would you say that's just not correct?
I haven't used amalgams since probably I'd say 1980. I quit using amalgam in 1980 when I began studying with Ron Jordan, and then I studied with Bertolotti, and then I studied with Kenka, and then I studied with Gordon Christensen. And I quit using amalgam in those days when I was doing my mentoring with them. And I haven't used it since. So I have taken amalgam out of my toolkit, okay? What I find interesting is that I have amalgam restorations in my mouth that my dad, who was a dentist, put in when I was a teenager, and they're still in my mouth. But my teeth are fracturing around some of those amalgams, and what do? I think you'll find this pretty hilarious, but I put glass ionomer in my own mouth over those amalgams. What's very interesting to me is glass ionomer sticks marvelously to amalgam. So those dentists that want to still use amalgam, and there is a small percentage of them that still do, I tell them don't take it out of your toolkit because it'll be much more comfortable for them if it's in their toolkit. And I tell them, hey, when amalgams fracture, and you don't want to do any more destruction, you want to be minimally invasive, and there isn't any decay under it, put glass ionomer on top of it, and it'll stick to the amalgam as well as to the tooth, and test it out yourself, doctor. Do it yourself. I just emailed Dr. Doug Young from UOP, and he told me, hey, I put one of these in my mouth. And then he told me Brian Novi did one in his mouth. It's really funny. Here we got Dr. Young, Dr. Brian Novi, and me putting glass ionomer crowns on our own teeth ourselves, not going to a dentist to have it done, doing it on ourselves and seeing tremendous outcomes on our own teeth that we're doing with glass ionomer, in my case, over an amalgam that my dad did when I was a teenager. But no, I haven't used amalgam, and it's not really in my toolkit whatsoever. But I haven't taken composites out.
I want to go back to the biggest issues. Again, going with the emergencies. You've been doing this for decades. How do you treat child behavior management? I mean, how can you stay out of the OR? I mean, 40 years ago, the papoose board was the most common. I think that was more common than the OR when I was little. How has it changed in managing child behavior from papoose boards to ORs to now?
I burned my papoose board.
Come on, you should have used it as a snowboard. You're out there in Oregon and Maine. Couldn't you have snowboarded with that?
It doesn't have enough rocker on it. It's too flat. Here's the deal. I call knee to knee, lap to lap with a parent. So I'm going knee to knee, just like we are right here, Howard. Look at me. The two of us, knee to knee, right? Put your kid in your lap. I want you to turn the kid around so your kid is facing you. Put his legs around your waist and put his head in my lap, right here, just like this, in my lap. Now, you hold his hands and he cries. Perfect. His mouth is open. Now I treat him. You hold him lovingly. I treat him lovingly. I call that the act of dental love. And I can do it from birth to about age, I've done it on 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, who are big and strong, but they feel the love. Mom's holding the hands. Mom's showing the kid that she trusts Dr. John. She trusts Dr. Howard. Dr. Howard is treating and she trusts, and there's love. And no matter how the kid acts, no matter how much he cries, what do we say? You're the best patient I ever saw. Thank you for letting me paint your teeth with the medicine. Thank you for letting me smear this glass ionomer medicine on your teeth. We'll have you back in a couple weeks and we'll do it again. And if you want to cry, that's fine because you let us do it. That's what does it. We need to learn to be healers. This is hands-on healing in the classical sense, where we have energy coming from our hands, from a higher source, because we are taught to be healers first. Or are we? Are we now being taught in dental school? You can answer this better than me, Howard. Are we taught to be technicians? Or are we taught to be hands-on healers?
I hope healers. So I want to go back to SDF and everything you're saying, because you guys have the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, and it's a huge organization. They have 6,591 members. So what does the AAPD, what is your leader? What is the Pope saying about pediatric dentistry today that is different than 4 decades ago? Are they on board with SDF? Or are they wishing it would go away? What do they think?
AAPD is all politics. Joe Franken, not Joe. I always call him Joe, but it's Joe. He's from the Netherlands, invented ART. In 1998, the World Health Organization declared that atraumatic restorative treatment, as per Jo Franken, was the standard of care, should be the first go-to for all caries in all children worldwide. AAPD wouldn't accept it. Oh no, they had to invent their own ART, and they called it ITR. Interim therapeutic restoration. Well, let me tell you something, Howard. Every restoration is interim and therapeutic. There is no such thing as a permanent restoration, no matter what material, no matter whose mouth. AAPD is politics. They're going to be grouped within AAPD. We have wonderful people that are promoting SDF, like Jeanette McLean. God bless her. And she's changing the face of AAPD. But we've got diehards in AAPD who are resistant. You know, the bottom line is, in organized dentistry, AAPD, AEA, AGD, all of them, we got to emphasize the fact that SDF is just another topical fluoride, only newer and better. And that anyone with a license that allows them to apply topical fluoride should automatically be allowed to apply SDF. SDF is a potent tooth desensitizer, so is fluoride varnish, but SDF is way more effective. Caries is a bacterial disease, and bacterial diseases of the human body should not be treated by invasive surgery first, whether you're AAPD, AGD, or ADA. And if your house is on fire, call a fireman, for gosh sake, not a carpenter.
So to hold your feet to the fire, the president of the AAPD, Kevin Donnelly, he's down there in conservative good old boy Texas. Is he using SDF?
Kevin Donnelly's using SDF, but he's got one foot on the conservative side of the naysayers and the other foot with Jeanette McLean and myself and Jeremy Horst and the others with the SDF. And he's trying to play both fields. I guess that's probably, again, politically correct because, like I said, this is about politics. He doesn't want to lose his old school constituency, but he wants to stay friends with the new school constituency. So you'll see him talking out of both sides of his mouth, like any president of such an organization will have to these days.
Right. Any leader of a tribe. It doesn't matter if it's your own household family, your city, your country, the world. I mean, the animals all have to get along on the surface, and the surface sapiens always arrange themselves that way. Or there's other controversies from the past. I still want to get your 4-decade perspective. Do you think, water fluoridation is still controversial? I mean, 1/4 of Americans think it's a bad idea, and I can't believe that now anti-vaccinators are as strong as the anti-fluoridators. I mean, 1/4 of Americans don't want vaccines or water or fluoride in the water. Do you think fluoride in the water is as important today as when they started doing it in Grand Rapids, Michigan in 1945? Or has the whole bioactive film changed and it's less of a necessary? What's your view on water fluoridation after 4 decades?
Well, Howard, when I first started doing dentistry in Bangor, Maine in 1974, that was my first year as a dentist, having graduated dental school from the University of Pittsburgh. And I went to Bangor, Maine, and I became a public health dentist, and I stayed in that position for 32 years. While in Maine, I helped to fluoridate more New England communities than probably any person still alive today. I worked with Myron Alukian. I worked with, many of the late greats of the day to fluoridate. I was what was called a fluoride evangelist. Well, then what happened was the substrate changed, as we talked earlier. We went to corn syrup, and the decay became caries became so virulent that all of the water fluoridation that we were doing was helping a little bit, but it wasn't really meeting the need alone without something more. And then we got the anti-fluoridationists in there, and we were screaming back and forth across the table with each other. And there came a point when I finally threw my arms up and I said, I don't want to do this kind of politicking anymore, because I can apply those fluorides locally in the mouth and have a greater effect. Yes, there's a combined effect. Yes, water fluoridation is very positive. Fluoridated toothpaste, absolutely. 5,000 parts per million fluoridated toothpaste for those, high-risk cases, those high-risk kids that can spit. We don't want to use that in kids that swallow, because we'll have we want it to be topical fluoride, not systemic fluoride when we're using it in toothpaste. And when we're using it as SDF and when we're using it in glass ionomer, it's topical. But you got to remember something, Howard. I mean, this is really important. We get 35,000 parts per million of fluoride after immediately placing a glass ionomer, and 20 parts per million locally into that tooth for the first month after placement. My gosh, man, balance that against 1 part per million? Are you kidding me? I mean, even 7 to 8 years later, Rolla Christensen is telling us we're getting as much as, 7 parts per million from glass ionomer fillings. And balance that against 1 part per million from the water. Yes, it's additive, but I think we can be more effective and do less politicking, more dentistry on more people, and be more effective if we use glass ionomers in combination with silver diamine fluoride and fluoride varnish at the chair side, and try to keep our communities that are fluoridated. But I don't think that our efforts to fluoridate more communities are going to be as effective as what I just said.
There's an interesting thread on Dental Town right now about direct pulp caps, and everybody, of course, is a surgeon and wants to know, how do you do it? Do you do MTA pulp resin? The MTA pulp resin thread on Dental Town has about 200 pediatric dentists posting how they recommend doing this surgery, and but they don't address the fact that complete caries removal is no longer recommended by a lot of leaders in our profession. Why do you think it's emotional? That, I mean, obviously, if you came in this room and buried me in cement, I'd be dead. But they just don't want a dead corpse down there. They just want to clean it all out. Is that an emotional thing, or is there biological reasons not to leave dead bacteria? And
It's emotional and it's political and it's economic. You spend 4 years going to dental school, 4 years going to college, 4 years going to dental school. You're $500,000 in debt before you even open a practice. You open your practice, you're $1 million in debt before you see your first patient. And you learned how to do pulpotomies, so you're going to do pulpotomies, regardless of the scientific literature. We need to stop this. We need to look at the science. We need to be scientists first. The science points to the fact we should be going nowhere near the damn pulp. Get the mushy stuff out. Stay the hell away from that stuff. When you get into leathery dentin, leave it. I don't even put a burr in the mouth anymore. I use a spoon excavator and I scoop out the soft stuff, the mushy stuff. I put the silver diamine fluoride on top. I put the glass ionomer on top, and that lasts till exfoliation. Indirect pulp caps, ridiculous. Direct pulp caps, ridiculous. Don't go there. Okay. Now, I'm not saying take that out of your toolkit. There will be the occasional case where a direct or indirect pulp cap is absolutely indicated, where it will work, but it will become rarer and rarer the more you use the medical management of caries in minimally invasive dentistry, period.
Okay, these kids want to know exact brand names. You said you use SDF and glass ionomer. They want to know what brand where.
Okay, well, in the United States, the only silver diamine fluoride that we can get is Advantage Arrest, which comes from Elevate Oral Care, and that's what you have to buy. If you're in Australia, you can use a silver fluoride product that's a different brand, or you could use Riva. I think in the United States we can get Riva Star also, but you don't want to use the potassium iodine part, just the silver part. But it's more expensive than the Advantage Arrest from Elevate. So what we advocate is Advantage Arrest. That's what you're buying. Then the glass ionomer that you put on top, just make sure that it's got either pure glass ionomer, or if you're using a resin-modified glass ionomer. Why would you use a resin-modified glass ionomer, Howard? Because you're married to the light. Well, why are you married to the light? Because you learned using the light in dental school, and you've got better patient management because it's quicker. You can set the thing up. They can walk out and it's hard. So you can use resin-modified glass ionomers. I'm partial to the GC America products because they aren't resistant to divulging what's in them. In other words, it's not proprietary. They say, yes, it's this much percent glass ionomer, this much percent resin. That's important to me. But there's other glass ionomer products on the market that'll work with silver diamine fluoride, and you use the two of them together.
Okay, well, my friend Jeffrey Knight, who's big in down under, and so I want you to go back and say, why did you not like Riva Star's two-step procedure where they're applying potassium iodide solution over the silver fluoride solution? A silver iodide precipitate is formed. Why do you not like that?
Because we took extracted teeth and we with caries, and we did a study using the potassium iodide and their silver diamine fluoride, and then just silver diamine fluoride. And at first, for the first week of putting the teeth in solution, the potassium iodide teeth were white and the silver diamine fluoride teeth were black. And then after a month, they all turned black. So we found that there was no difference. And to do the Jeff Knight, silver Riva Star potassium iodide technique is not non-invasive. He is recommending needles and drills. It's an invasive procedure. Okay, that's fine. We're not about invasiveness. I'm sure it works. Dr. Jeff Knight is a wonderful scientist. He worked with Dr. Graham Craig, who helped him develop the product. Dr. Graham Craig is now not advocating or using the Riva Star product. nor are we, because it's an invasive procedure. You know, Dr. Craig was doing SMART in 1978 on Aborigines children who had bad dental experiences, previous bad dental experience from well-intentioned missionaries who came in and did invasive dentistry. And then they were combative when Dr. Craig went into the outback. He couldn't treat these kids. So, you know, necessity became the mother of invention, and he started applying silver ion solutions with glass ionomers in 1978, collected data, and he's the great granddaddy of SMART as far as we're concerned. And he helped to develop Revastar and isn't using it. He's advocating the non-invasive, no needle, no drill technique of silver diamine fluoride and glass ionomer. You can't do that with Revastar. You've got to give needles and use drills.
So he's the you're talking about Graham Craig, right? The director of the Dental Health Foundation of Australia, and
yes.
He's not using SDI when it's right out of Melbourne in his own backyard.
Not only that, he helped develop the product and still works for, as far as I know, still works for SDI or worked for SDI. But no, he's not using Revastar because, again, he has dedicated the rest of his career, but both as an academic, he teaches in the dental school there, and as a clinician, to non-invasive work. So again, not using needles or drills.
Is he your buddy?
I've met him once in person, and we email each other quite often. And he's my hero as well as my friend.
Wow, that is so cool. So I can't believe we already went over an hour. I gotta switch gears and go into overtime. Can I keep you on overtime a little bit longer?
Yeah, let me tell you another Graham Craig story. You ready?
Yeah.
So we did a public smarting. We did street smart in San Francisco. We've received a lot of criticism for that. IADR was in San Francisco a couple years ago, the International Association of Dental Research, and we decided that outside of the Marriott at the Moscone Center, that we would actually conduct a smarting on the streets of San Francisco on homeless people. So we announced with a megaphone, walking up and down the street, that we would provide free dentistry. And we had a lawn chair, and I created a bicycle triturator. I made a triturator out of a bicycle. So you turn a bicycle upside down, and you can actually triturate a capsule of silver diamine fluoride if you have a credit card. I used an old credit card with a hole in it, and you hold the credit card to the spokes of the bicycle, and it goes, and it actually triturates the material. And we were using a bicycle triturator. If you want to see this, go to YouTube, bicycle triturator, and you'll see the bicycle triturator. We did this on the street with lawn chairs, applying silver diamine fluoride, doing a little bit of scooping of material, applying silver diamine fluoride, and put glass ionomer in patients' teeth, sitting in the dental chair in the Moscone Center on the street in San Francisco. And people from IADR were coming out of the building wondering what the heck was going on and watching us. And we got a lot of criticism for that because, you know, it was kind of over the top. But one thing that struck me was this voice behind me as I was doing a smart is saying, "That's amazing. That's simply amazing." And I said, "Boy, that's an odd voice." And I kept doing the work, and I heard it again. "That's amazing." And somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "That's Dr. Craig." And I turned around and I said, "Oh my gosh, you're Graham Craig." He said, "Well, you must be John." And I said, "Well, I am." And that's where we met each other. And he thought it was amazing because I was using my finger. This one right here, Howard, because it's the instrument I always have with me on the end of my wrist. And I was using my finger to apply the glass ionomer on the street. And I literally do that same technique in the dental office because I have to, because I see a patient every 10 minutes, as many as 20, 30, 40 patients a day. And I'm able to do that because, again, I'm a fireman, and it is my obligation, my job, my mission to put out fires first. I haven't given up doing the jewelry of dentistry. I will hold my composites, anterior and posterior, up to any in the world because I've studied with the best. But I put the fire out first because I feel that is what we are ethically bound to. And I don't know if they take the Hippocratic Oath like I did when I was in dental school these days. They probably don't. But I took it to heart, Howard, and that's what I do.
Well, my brother, Paul, lives in Sydney, Australia, and I've gone down there about every 5 years and lectured to a half dozen cities every 5 years, probably since 1990. But this Graham Craig you're talking about, he's not only a dentist, he has a PhD, and he got his PhD. He uses chemistry background to investigate various metal fluorides, and a study of iron fluorides became the base for his PhD. This is not some guy with just some minor opinion. This guy has been published 30 times, and and he's given over 200 postgraduate courses. He's just an amazing man. So back to the kids. You've done this 4 decades as a pediatric dentist. They just walked out of pediatric dental kindergarten. What advice would you give them moving forward? Where should they go from here?
What advice should I give the kids?
Yeah, they just graduated from pediatric dental school. I mean, do you? What would you tell them to do? Would you tell them that they should do some public health for a while to get more education? Do you recommend these? What are they? The FHQs? Is that FQHCs? What advice would you give a new graduate from pediatric dentist?
Well, the biggest problem that we have is with these new graduates is that, they're in debt up to their ears, and they need to make money quick. And I would say, don't be put off by those who will tell you that you can't make money doing smart dentistry. You can make more money doing smart dentistry because moms get it, Howard. Moms get it. The moms come in, they don't want their babies hurt. They don't want their babies to have needles and drills. When you don't use needles and drills and put the fire out first, you're going to get more referrals from more moms and more referrals, and your practice is going to build very, very quickly. You're going to get out on time. You're going to have less emergencies. You're going to see more patients in any given unit of time. You're going to charge less per patient because you're not being as invasive, but cumulatively, you're going to make more money because you're going to see more patients, and you're going to be busier than you could ever imagine being than when you thought at one time that you were going to become an invasive dentist. I'll never forget when I lectured at UCSF in San Francisco with Dr. Jeremy Horst and Steve Duffin. And we lectured, and there were many prominent lecture dentists that have given lectures, and I've been in their lectures, that were sitting in my lecture. And I was honored to be there. Dr. Joel White was there, Dr. Don Calusi, many other great visionaries in dentistry were there. And they were listening to me talk with my colleagues, Dr. Horst and Dr. Duffin. And at the end, they had many questions, and we were holding a question and answer session. But one of the dentist faculty members interrupted us and said, "Would you please come downstairs? We have third-year dental students applying silver diamine fluoride for the very first time." John Featherstone was dean, and he had initiated it at UCSF, and it was historic. And they wanted me and Dr. Duffin and Dr. Horst to come downstairs to take a picture with third and fourth year dental students applying silver diamine fluoride. And we took these pictures, and I had my arm around this one dental student, and she was sobbing as the pictures were being taken. And I thought, boy, there's something wrong. And we were done taking the pictures, and I said to her, "Are you okay?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm fine." And she was just sobbing. And I said, are you sure? And she said, I'm crying, Dr. John, because I am so happy that I don't have to do dentistry the way I was taught, invasively, that I can do it this way, non-invasively, medically, and with the kindest and best possible way that is preventive of future decay. Thank you for bringing this into my life. Well, I hope that through this podcast, Howard, and through other media, that we can spread this word to these new dentists and that they can feel the same as that dental student felt that day when she first applied silver diamine fluoride in the UCSF Dental School clinic.
Well, when you started this answer, you talked about economic incentives. They have a lot of debt. When two or more people get together, it was the first economist, Adam Smith, from Scotland, who said that they're conspiring against the masses. The biggest controversial thing is dental therapists, because that's invading on dentist economic production, or even EFTA, expanded duty dental function assistants. So if you answer this question, I'm actually throwing you off a bridge right now, off of a cliff. Do you think dental therapists are an important part of silver diamine fluoride and preventing dental decay, especially on children of high risk?
So Howard, this question keeps being raised with let's go to dental hygienists. Let's go to EFTAs first, and then we'll go to DHATs, okay? With therapists. Montana a couple months ago decided that dental hygienists weren't allowed to apply silver diamine fluoride, because that would indicate that dental hygienists were diagnosing decay, and that wasn't allowed by their state dental board. Let me tell you something. Dentists don't diagnose caries. Silver diamine fluoride does. It's the greatest caries detector known to dentistry, period. And I don't care whether my dog applies it or whether a dentist applies it. Damn it, if it turns the tooth black, it was carious, because it won't stain non-affected dentin. It won't stain non-affected dental tooth structure. So saying that a dental hygienist or an EFTA can't apply it is silly. It's stupid. It's turf fighting. It's turf wars. I'm sick of these turf wars, damn it. Are we real doctors, Howard? Real doctors have physician's assistants. When I go to my doctor, I'm first seen by PA. And by golly, she's good. And I trust her. I love her. She does a wonderful job. She always has. She always will. Are we not that kind of doctor? Or are we afraid of losing turf, of losing market share to our EFTAs? Look, let me tell you something. When we teach this, when I go out and lecture SDF and SMART, and I lecture it to dentists, it's hard. When I lecture it to EFTAs, it's easy, because they have a lot less to unlearn, and because most of them are moms, and moms get it. Okay? Now let's go to dental therapists. Dental therapists are just another in the many line of auxiliaries that we have that I feel personally are necessary in certain areas. For instance, in Alaska, where the American Dental Association fought against the dental therapist movement there, and they lost in a lawsuit. Well, those dentists that won the lawsuit against the American Dental Association in favor of the dental therapist actually hired me to go up to remote village in Alaska on a barrier island 50 miles from Russia in the Bering Sea. Now, Howard, how are you going to get new dental grads to go to a barrier island in the Bering Sea where they eat ugruk as their major protein source. Ugruk is bearded seal. They were killing bearded seal on the ice when I arrived, and they were eating raw blubber on the ice when I flew into this place, where we had on board two dentists that had hired me to come there and teach them how to do SMART and how to use silver diamine fluoride. And I was hired specifically to train dental therapists because they couldn't get dentists to go to this island. Now, I think there's areas in our country where we need dental therapists and EFTAs, and that we should quit being so damned paranoid because, if we're real doctors, let's have confidence in who and what we are. And we need to learn how to delegate, damn it, because there's too much decay for us to be able to drill or fill our way out of. We're never going to drill and fill our way out of the decay that we have today. We need help, so delegate that help.
Nice. I'll tell you what, the most romantic thing about Alaska is, we bought that from Russia in 1867, and they still have Russian communities that don't speak a word of English. And when you walk in there, you're just getting stared down like you're not of our tribe. And when I was down there driving around and going halibut fishing and salmon fishing, and I was telling the dentist when I lectured where I'd gone and talked to, they're like, dude, that's not your place. You should not have gone there. And you know why America actually bought it? Because if they didn't buy it from Russia, Denmark was going to buy it. So they just wanted it because Denmark wanted it. They didn't even have a reason for getting it. But back to these, there's 4,453 pediatric dentists in the United States. They just got out of school. They have tons of debt. Money's the answer. What's the question? Insurance really drives so much of healthcare in the United States. It's a fee-for-service, economized incentive plan to drill, fill, and bill and do surgeries. Do you think the SDF economic reimbursements are too low for the high economic reimbursements of a pulpotomy chromosome crown? Do you think the major player in that space in America is Delta Dental? Do you think Delta Dental's got this right economically, or do you think they have it wrong economically?
Well, first of all, we got to go back to what I said earlier, that 50% of all children with paid for private health insurance benefits do not utilize the dental benefits they already have because dentistry is too expensive, too invasive, and because they've had bad previous dental experiences. So let's start with that. 50% of these people that have dental insurance aren't even getting treated because they don't want to go to the dentist. Okay? So let's start there. Now, let's look at the paradigm shift because, we use that term. Steve Duffin used it in your podcast, and others have used it, paradigm shift. When you have two paradigms, Howard, what do you have in between the paradigms? You got chaos. That's where we are right now. We've got chaos, economic chaos with the insurance companies especially. So here's the deal with SMART. It was a couple of years ago, I called up the ADA and I said, hey, you guys, you better call glass ionomer a composite so that when we do glass ionomers, we can bill for composites per surface. And they said, oh, no. And I said, wait a minute. Glass ionomers are a composition of dental materials by definition. And many glass ionomers have resin in them. So they have composite in them. Now, if you don't want my lawyers to be talking to your lawyers about this, I think you better settle this now. I'm not going to wait. I want it settled now in the CDT guidelines. I want this in the book. Otherwise, I will. I literally threatened a class action lawsuit. They heard me loud and clear, and within weeks, they changed it. And the new CDT guidelines, just a few years ago, came out saying that glass ionomers are composites. Now, what that's opened up for you and me is this, and for our new graduates. When we do a SMART, we can charge that two ways, all right? If you're new to SMART, and you're not confident that it will retain. Okay, now retention is a weird metric, Howard. Retention is no longer a good metric. When you've got glass ionomers, it doesn't matter whether the glass ionomer is retained or not, because that doesn't identify failure or success because of the 35,000 parts per million and that permanent zone of acid-resistant chemical fusion that occurs between the glass ionomer and the tooth. Even if the glass ionomer is lost, you still got that layer in there that is acid resistant. So you can also add more glass ionomer without giving any needles and without giving any drills. And that can therefore be thought of, the outer layer of the glass ionomer can be thought of as a sacrificial layer, right? So if you are going to if you think you're going to have to replace that glass ionomer, don't charge it as a composite, because insurance companies will only allow you to charge the composite once. If you have to do it again, it's on your dime. Don't charge it as a composite, charge it as a sedative filling, which brings in less money than a composite, but allows you to do it multiple times until you've learned the technique well enough to know, this one is going to retain. Then, when you've got the skill and knowledge and confidence that your smart is going to retain, start charging it as a composite per surface and make just as much money as you would be doing drill and fill composite dentistry and not lose a dime.
Okay, I need to let you go, but I can't let the man go without hearing your views on dental sealants. I mean, they're all over the board. Dental Town that has 50 categories, one for each of the 10 specialties. Under pediatric dentist, I mean, you got people saying, God, sealants, half of them fail the first year, half fail the second year. There's a big joke. If the sealant falls off and the tooth doesn't have a cavity, then it didn't need a sealant anyway. I think that's a very funny joke. But what's your thoughts on dental sealants?
I think dental sealants should all be glass ionomers or resin-modified glass ionomers, because those dental sealants, if they were glass ionomers, would then serve as mineral ion reservoirs for the rest of the teeth. There was a study done in 1994 by a guy by the name of Seghetti in Italy on 1,700 5-year-olds that proves, it's a wonderful study, you should look it up, CEGETTI. It's a wonderful study that proves that glass ionomer sealants on the occlusal surfaces of teeth prevent caries interproximally. So as a preventive measure, not just on the occlusal surface, but for all surfaces, smear glass ionomer on all teeth of all children in all schools in America, damn it. And do it with EFTAs and dental therapists, because dentists are too busy in their offices. Back to the dental therapist. Put them in the damn schools and have them smear glass ionomer on all the posterior primary and permanent teeth of all children in America. And forget about this silly, inert, composite resin sealant crap. Use glass ionomers. Uncensored dentistry, flat out, Howard. That's the deal. Glass ionomer, why not? You're doing smarts anyway. What are you going to do with the rest of the capsule, Howard? You're going to throw it away? Put it on the tooth behind. Oh, well, wait a minute. The tooth behind doesn't have any caries on it. I don't care. Smear it on the occlusal surface. Put it into occlusion. There's your glass ionomer sealant acting as a mineral reservoir of ions, mineral ions, for the rest of the teeth to help combat the virulence of today's dental disease.
And last but not least, I mean, the biggest issue is, I mean, obviously I have 4 children that made me, 5 grandchildren. The biggest nightmare would be if one of them didn't wake up from sedation. And the AAP, Pediatric Dental Group update, says that they just recommended, they just published this not too long ago, that there needs to be at least 2 individuals with specific training and credentials should be present with a pediatric patient undergoing deep sedation, general anesthesia for dental treatment in a dental facility or a hospital surgical center. Last question? What is your view and what are your thoughts after 4 decades on dental sedation, and what would your guidance be?
You know, what you just said about having 2 other individuals there in anesthesiology is absolutely no insurance whatsoever against your grandchild dying from sedation or hospital dentistry. I gave a lecture in Hawaii to the Pediatric Dental Association of Hawaii in Honolulu 2 years ago. And the whole front row was a group of Chinese dentists living in Honolulu, working in Honolulu, that were pediatric dentists. And they were young except for one. He was an elder. And they were listening intently to everything I said and asking the most questions. And they made sure they placed themselves in the front row. And at the end of my lecture, the elder came up to me at the lectern and he said, "Could we have a word?" And I said, "Certainly." And we walked out in the hall and he said, "That's my family." I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "That's my daughter and my son-in-law, and that's our staff." And I am the dentist who tried to help save Sydney Boyle's life. She was the first little girl, I think she was 3 years old, that died from sedation in a dental office. And he said, "I want you to know the dentist that was doing the sedation was down the hall from me in the building across the street in Honolulu. And she was doing sedation dentistry with an anesthesiologist present 3 to 4 days a week, and I tried to stop her from doing it. I told her, quit doing this, and she said, I can't stop doing it. I've got $1 million debt from dental school and opening the new office. This brings in a ton of money to me. And he said, please stop doing it. I'll help you any way I can. You're going to hurt someone. And sure enough, she had this incident, and who did she go to? She went running down the hall to him. Do you know 2-person CPR? Will you help save this little girl? And this Chinese man, with a tear in his eye, said to me, I breathed in her mouth, but I couldn't bring her back alive. So thank you for lecturing today and teaching me and my staff that we don't need to go there anymore. Let's stop doing this, Howard.
Wow, that is a sad story. You said you're talking about the case of Lily Geyer?
Sydney Boyle.
Sydney Boyle. How do you spell Sydney Boyle?
Boyle, Sydney.
Huh. That is Finley Boyle. I thought you were saying.
I'm sorry, Finley. Findley. Finley Boyle.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and these are just the nightmares. She was a 3-year-old girl who was left brain dead following a procedure at a local dentist in Hawaii. That's got to be rock bottom, and just rock bottom.
And imagine, Howard, if you were lecturing and the very dentist who advised against the dentist doing that, the other dentist doing that, and who was called in to save that little girl's life, ended up in the front row of my lecture. What are the chances, man?
But she was eventually found not guilty of manslaughter in that case. There was a trial and she was found not guilty.
Well, whatever. What I'm saying is, look what happens when we do this. I'm not saying that she should be held guilty or accountable. I'm sure she's paid her dues in terms of grief. And I feel as sorry for the dentist as I do for the family and for the little girl. That isn't the point. The point is, let's try to rescue patients from having those. Let's rescue dentists from feeling, and young dentists that are graduating dental school, from feeling that they need to resort to that to pay their debts. That's wrong, man. That's wrong.
Yeah, and it's not about innocent or guilty. It's about the end of the day, that little girl is gone, and it just ruins it for the dentist, the family, the little girl. Is just a colossal disaster. That's why I love this podcast, so we can talk about the stuff that's completely Dentistry Uncensored. I mean, we just talk about stuff that everyone would cringe at, unless you're with them at dinner and you're having dinner and drinks, then they want to talk like we talk. But when you go to a dental meeting, you lose that completely. I've said it so many times over the years. I listened to so many lectures where half the people left at lunch, never came back. It was so boring, you thought you were going to die. And then later that night at the bar, 4 beers later, you're getting the best damn dental lecture in the world. And I'm sitting there saying, why didn't you talk like this in your lecture? And so that is the difference. That the medium makes the format. But seriously, John, you're a legend in my mind. You're in the legend in Janelle's mind. I mean, you've done so much for dentistry. And most people do not want to go on the record. They don't want to post in social media across all platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Less than 1% make all the original content and only 9% reply, whereas 90% of all surface sapiens on Earth just read. They're lurkers. And it's so refreshing to get a guy like you that has just no filters, no holds bar. I mean, you don't really care what anybody thinks. This is what you passionately believe in, and you're willing to share it, and regardless of if that causes an arrow in your back. So I love you for it, and thank you so much for giving me and my homies an hour and a half of your life today. I had so much fun podcast interviewing you.
Thank you, Howard. I really appreciate it. It was an honor.
And we have to go on the record. Who loves Jeanette McLean more, me or you? It's obviously me, but are you going to try to claim that it's you?
She's just one of my favorite people in the whole world because what she brings to the table, because of the love for the children that she imparts. Because, Howard and Jeanette is a great example of this. It's not about us, man. It's about the kids. And we got to remember that.
Yeah, and she's got some great online CE courses. If you don't want to have to fly to Hawaii to see John lecture, I mean, it's right on Dental Town. I mean, they cost less than the Uber ride to the airport to fly to a course. She's got one of the biggest courses on Dental Town. Silver is the new black, improving your practice with silver diamine fluoride. You just have to watch it. John, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Howard.